Good morning to you all. I'm Gerald Davis, and I'm Dean of the USC Davis School of Gerontology and Executive Director of the Andrews Gerontology Center. And it's a pleasure to welcome you all most cordially to today's forum. There are many distinguished people in the audience, and you'll be meeting and hearing about many of them, but I want to recognize and welcome former U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, Harris Waford, to this event. It's a real honor to have him here. On July 14, 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Older Americans Act into law, and 16 days later he signed legislation creating Medicare and Medicaid. These three programs, along with Social Security, have served as the foundation for economic health and social support for millions of seniors, individuals with disabilities, and their families. We often forget about the families. Because of these programs, millions of older Americans have lived and are continuing to live more secure, healthier, and meaningful lives. The Older Americans Act has been instrumental in providing nutrition and community support to millions. It has also protected the rights of seniors and in many cases has been the key to their growing independence and enhanced quality of life and longevity. We are pleased to be co-hosting today's forum with our various partners that you'll be hearing more about as the morning goes on. As part of a nationwide series of panel discussions co-hosted by Age4Action Network, today's forum will give leading experts in the field the opportunity to weigh in on ways to improve the Older Americans Act. And we would also welcome your thoughts and suggestions from the audience, and the ideas that we collect today will be summarized and shared with Congress prior to the Act's reauthorization in 2011. Today is a wonderful opportunity to reflect on how to make the future of older Americans and of all Americans a better one. The ways older people are treated by society reflect the values and morality of that society and also influence the economic lives and social circumstances of younger populations. So it's a misconception to think it's only about older people. It is much broader and more important than that, as important as the older population is. I want to thank every one of you for sharing your time and expertise here today. And now I am pleased to introduce Brian Lindbergh, the Public Policy Director of Experience Wave. He's been one of the key organizers of the event, and he will take things from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Davison, and thank you all for coming today. Good morning. I have the distinguished honor to introduce former Senator Harris Waford. Senator Waford has been a leader in service and volunteering for half a century. He served under President Kennedy as an advisor on civil rights and was instrumental in the creation of the Peace Corps. He later served as the Peace Corps Director of Operations in Ethiopia and as the Associate Director of the Peace Corps from 1962 until 1966. He served as a U.S. Senator to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania from 1991 to 1994, and after his tenure there, he served as the CEO of the Corporation for National and Community Service and has served on many boards and nonprofits in the service area. We are very proud to have him serve as the spokesperson for Experience Wave and Age4Action. So without further ado, let's give Senator Waford a warm welcome.
Thank you, Brian, for all that you do in this. And whoever just cleared that problem. And Dean Davidson, for your good work and the work of this good school. And thank you for coming. This looks like a tremendous huddle, a tremendous team. It's more than a little huddle. And I know that I am talking to people who do know more about this field than I do. That's unusual because I conceivably am the oldest elder of the tribe who's here. At 84 years, I've lived a lot more than 1/3 of this life of our country, which shows not only how old I am, assuming you know what score means. I've been taking a poll on that when I learned that most of the younger generation, they may know the Gettysburg Address, but somehow score is not a household word. But 1/3 the life of our nation shows how young the nation is. And now it's getting older. The demographic wave is coming in. We call it the experience wave as a counterpoint to the wave of population, boomer generation retirement that is generally treated as a problem, a burden, a terrible force that we may not be able to handle, the needs, the bankruptcy of our country. Now, I'm overstating a little bit, but I don't hear the country realizing that not only those of us that are older than the boomer generation, but the boomer generation coming, living longer, healthier by and large than any other generation, we're told, that the talent, the energy, the experience is something this country could use as a tremendous asset. And that's the change of mindset that I think the country needs. Now, you're going to deal with, or the panel's going to be dealing, and you'll be responding and talking about aspects of this that need to be faced, that are complicated. It isn't simple. And I want to come back to a few thoughts for the conversation today about the Older Americans Act itself. But let me just say that about experience wave, that we believe that the question for the nation that we need to put to the nation is how do we get ready for this wave that is crashing around us already and help it become a wave of constructive and creative work and active engagement in community life? And how do we tap that knowledge, talent, and experience? And that's a how-to problem that the subjects for the panel are going to deal with. Now, you may have noted in the resume, along with the fact that, once again, no one has ever introduced me saying that I was defeated by Rick Santorum, which is a little more interesting than just our victory. You know, the counter resume of most of us would be more interesting than the very generous one that Brian gave me. But good part of my life, from high school, organizing students to form an organization called Student Federalists in 1942 for a union of democracies to win the war against Hitler and to be a nucleus for a world union able to keep the peace. And we spread to hundreds of high schools before I went in the Army Air Corps in my 18th birthday in 1944. And then with the atomic bomb, many Student Federalist chapters, hundreds, were already in universities and colleges, but it sprang up on a huge level. It was a time when the country had discovered that in helping to win that war with all forces of America and the country pulling together in a way that most of us have not seen since, if we were living then, and most of our children and grandchildren can't imagine a country where, you know, we were proud to be riding bicycles instead of the cars. We spread Student Federalists by high schools around Westchester County and then trains. It was a great experience, both those that were in the armed forces and the whole generation of coming together on a common cause. And we need somehow to capture that spirit for our problems we have today. And that's the very hardest thing to do, because we're supposed to be able to respond to a Katrina and an oil spill and a terrible fire near Los Angeles. And we do respond to the dramatic crises, but the slower crises that are tremendous. And I want to recognize the negative of my affirmative case. If we don't see older Americans as an asset and find the ways and means to see that they have opportunities to work and to serve and to be active leaders in our society, we're going to pay a terrible long-term price. I was privileged to be part of a 3-person study that the AARP commissioned a few years ago. I don't know whether, how many of you have actually seen the printed version of More to Give, tapping the talents of the baby boomers, silent and greatest generations. How many have seen that in writing? And then all of you could see it on the website, www.civicenterprises.net. It was a study that included a Peter Hart survey, and it presents a challenge to us. The large majority of over 50 people polled on different age groups, the large majority want in retirement to do some work, some service, something that contributes to the common good. The majority, also a large majority, feels they need more income when you get to the traditional time of retirement. And how you mesh those two facts is part of the challenge for us. And I think part of the answer to that is going to be to see how we find new mechanisms, new social inventions, or old ones. And that is where I would like to put a little weight before the conversation goes further. We're dealing with the Older Americans Act in a line of great legislation, great social innovations. So far, understandably, most of the conversations I've been about are about small but probably very valuable changes in some of the aspects of the Older Americans Act. Very little that I have heard or seen by our leaders calls for or moves toward the great kind of social innovations that Social Security, the Older Americans Act, Medicare, Medicaid, and the new health system that got passed many months ago now. When I was a college president, I kept trying to get support for innovative programs. And finally, the most powerful person related to the Pugh family said, well, Miss Ethel Pugh, the graduate of Bryn Mawr, really isn't so interested in innovation. She likes, most of all, the biblical injunction, hold fast to that which is good. And sure enough, we got a grant to look at the old buildings built in 1885 and 1885 and 1900, the beautiful old buildings. And before long, there was a $7 to $10 million investment in maintaining those buildings. Now, part of the structure for older Americans today exists. And when I say I hope we look to the big social innovation challenge of the past as an invitation to be creative now, I recognize very much that we need to hold fast to that which is good in the structure, the services that the agencies for aging and other aspects of the Older Americans Act have underway now, so far as I know, are certainly on balance good. They can be improved, and in many, many cases need to be greatly expanded. When Sergeant Shriver, who started foster grandparents, went to, I think it was the 30th anniversary, and heard my colleagues, I had the privilege of as CEO of the Corporation for National Service, be the overall person responsible for managing the senior corps of foster grandparents, senior companions, and RSVP volunteer programs. And he incorporated some of that in the war on poverty that he shaped before the war in Vietnam consumed all of our resources and brought the 16,000 person Peace Corps down to 5,000. Brought Kennedy's vision of 100,000 Peace Corps volunteers a year and 1 million in one decade, and by now 2-3 million would have served instead of just 200,000. So we went to foster grandparents to celebrate with them the 30th anniversary of remarkably good work, limited to very low income people who participate as the foster grandparents, and to service of older people in need, and heard that I think it was 30,000 then. And he said, 30,000? What's wrong with you? We imagined it would be 300,000. Why isn't it 10 times larger now, 30 years later? And we could ask that sort of question of all of these programs. And we need to ask, we need to be very careful about what is good that needs to be maintained and be accurate and informed, and use the Older Americans Act reauthorization that is coming upon us next year as an opportunity for improvement and for expansion. I also hope that this remarkable group of people dedicated to this field will lift our sights to the big way of looking at this challenge. I'm strongly advocating both the little and the big, but this is a time for the social innovation that can make history once more. And I think this country is hungry for the history that moving in the direction of Age4Action that's before you is ready for that. I think if you imagine what it would be like if we can move to, let us say, just take the service jobs, the employment program under Title 4 or 5, 5, and also the programs in Title 4. Just if instead of the present level, where we're talking about jobs programs, if there were 1 million jobs in the nonprofit service sector, that is beginning to deal something like the measure of the size of the challenge and the opportunity. Now, I think by now I've conveyed that despite my practical concerns, I have a romantic streak that my wife tried to resist over a long time. And she died 14 years ago, and would have enjoyed these 14 years together, discovering the next phase of this field we're talking about, which is the encore career that Mark Friedman writes about. I've had some of the great times of my life after I got the chance to go to the Congress at 65. In 70, I was at age 70. I started to then at 70 I was CEO of the Corporation for National Service, and then when Clinton's administration ended, I happened to work with Colin and Alma Powell and was basically full-time chair of America's Promise, related a lot of those programs to children and youth. And part of my mindset that changed, that led me here to you and to this assignment, was when we got the Martin Luther King Day of Service as a day, the holiday as a day on, not a day off. I was doing that kind of symbolic service for a day in Philadelphia with a youth corps, doing a habitat build, and the people said, this young African American you're painting or scraping the paint from walls was a gang leader. He was a dropout. He was heading to disaster, and he's now the most promising leader of this youth corps. And standing next to him, he said, when I asked, why did you take this turn and come to this youth corps? He said, well, thought it'd be a different gang. Might not die in the end. And we went on working. And finally he turned to me and said, the real reason is that I grew up in a project. And in the project, good people came to help me. Lots of good people kept coming to help us. And I think I got tired of people doing good against me. This is the first time in my life anyone ever asked me to do something good. I heard that, and then I remembered in the Peace Corps how delighted we were when one of the first volunteers was asked, why did you join the Peace Corps? And he said, because nobody had ever asked me to do something patriotic, unselfish, and for the common good before. Kennedy asked. And our little poll of people, and a lot of other polls, have said that the tapping of people for civic work, action, volunteering, comes when they're asked. And secondly, we all need to be needed and to be asked at all parts of our life. And that's what I'm talking about as a fundamental mindset. And if you look at the Older Americans Out basic page that you're given here, it has civic engagement at the very top point. But every other point there is what we're doing to or for older people, all of which needs to be done. The other great challenge is to do with and by, as well as for people of age. And that's the ball I would like to throw to you. The cure for the romantic point came in our marriage life, and my wife hated this story. When we had an occasion to talk to the great philosopher in Israel, Martin Buber, I and Thou and some other books, but Paths in Utopia was a book that led a group of interfaith people to the kibbutz in 1950 to look at the corporate and social inventions of the Zionist movement before the state. And for a variety of funny reasons, we didn't get to that meeting of our group with Buber. So right after Kennedy died on a trip to Israel, we put high on the list to meet Martin Buber. And in doing so, I, somewhere in the early part of the conversation, told him that our group went to Israel in 1950 with the book Paths in Utopia in mind, and the last phase in which he said the vision of a Arab-Jewish brotherhood and cooperation and a society of cooperatives has been plowed under by the vicious circle tragedy of Arab-Palestinian relations. But idea and fate do meet, and when we can count on a really great idea rising again when idea and fate meet once more in a creative hour. And my wife, the skeptic, guffawed and said, well, it'll be a long time coming from what we've seen on this trip. And as we parted, Martin Buber said to me, I hope you realize how lucky you are to be married to a realist, because you're a romantic, and a romantic needs a realist as a partner and spouse. And to Claire, he said, and I hope you recognize the fact that how right you are, that the times when idea and fate meet in a creative hour are very rare and a long time before another comes. But they do come, and my hope for you is that if one comes your way, your realism will not make you miss it. And I think we're at that kind of point with the Older Americans Act, and I hope we don't miss it for big thinking as well as good little thinking and a good morning session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Waford. We are all better for the encore career of Senator Waford. I was thinking when you mentioned SCORE that I was thinking, well, isn't that 20 years of the Service Corps of Retired Executives? My name is Patrick Cullinan. I'm with the UC Berkeley Retirement Center, and I'm here today to welcome you on behalf of the Age4Action Network. We thank you for your presence here today. It is really good to be with you and to hear your ideas about renewal of the Older Americans Act. Age4Action looks forward to our conversation today as we work together to recognize, respect, and respond to the resources and the needs of our growing older population. The Older Americans Act is an established and valuable tool to enhance our ability at all levels of our society to tap the resources and serve the needs of our older population. Today's input will help us better leverage this resource of the Act for older adults. The Age4Action National Network is a national movement to mobilize people 50 plus to be dynamic advocates, valued workers, committed volunteers, and lifelong learners in today's society. Age4Action links organizations focused on workforce, civic engagement, lifelong learning, and advocacy to share common resources, knowledge, and tools so they can best leverage the talent of people 50 years of age and older. We know we have 77 million citizens reaching their 50s and 60s in better health and with more financial security and education than in any previous generation, and that our 70-plus population is vital and growing. They all still want to work, serve, learn, and lead, and to have meaning and value in their lives. Their talent, time, and energy is needed by our communities, our economy, and future generations. Age4Action started in 2009 when a group of more than 60 national civic engagement organizations recognized a common goal and interest. We recognized that our combined resources and knowledge could help match the talents of older adults with the problems the country faces. The group formed what is now called the Age4Action Network. Today, with the support of the Atlantic Philanthropies, the National Council on Aging, the Gerontological Society of America, and Experience Wave share a vision and a mission with respect to our older population. We believe that people 50 years of age and older will strengthen society and improve communities through active engagement and valuable contributions as dynamic advocates, valued workers, committed volunteers, and lifelong learners. We are committed to engaging, informing, connecting, and mobilizing organizations and networks to increase opportunities for people 50 plus to work, serve, learn, and lead. So we invite you to join us, to, in the words of Senator Waford, to hold fast to what is good and vision a greater good we can create through the Older Americans Act. Thank you very much, and it's now my pleasure to introduce Jonathan Tran.
Good morning, everyone. How's it going? First of all, I want to thank Patrick and Brian for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jonathan Tran. I'm the California Policy Advocate for the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center. It's kind of a mouthful, or CRAC for short. We're the oldest advocacy organization that advocates on behalf of Cambodian, Laotian, and Vietnamese refugees through various activities, including leadership development, capacity building, and civic engagement. I was particularly thankful for Senator Waford's words in inspiring a vision for how we should move forward with the Older Americans Act. To be entirely frank, this is a little uncharted territory for me. Not because I'm in my mid-20s and working on this issue area, but rather because I'm from UCLA, and this is quite a bit of red and gold. At the same time, despite the fact that it's uncharted territory for me, I always think back in terms of looking at the issue of aging and make it very personal for me in terms of my grandfather. This is the 10-year anniversary of his passing. And it's really interesting, just the story of my family's background. So we started off in Vietnam, actually, and my parents grew up there as ethnic minorities in Vietnam. My last name says Tran, but it actually was changed in order to avoid persecution because we were of a different ethnicity in Vietnam. Like thousands of refugees that came over following the Vietnam War, my grandparents and my parents arrived as boat people. And so one of the interesting statistics regarding the boat people immigration actually is that 1 in every 2 boats never made it to shore. That left Vietnam never made it to shore. And so my dad ended up in Malaysia along with my grandfather, and my mom at a separate refugee camp in Indonesia, and they met here in America. So by the time my grandfather arrived in America, it was, for me, thinking coming to USC is uncharted territory. I can't imagine the experience he had in coming to a completely new country. He was at the age of 68 when he first arrived in the United States, with no English skills, in a completely foreign country. And as refugee, the catch is that you literally had to leave everything you had in your home country because you couldn't carry very much on the boat on the way over here. And so for him, it was a struggle to find meaning and a purpose for living while in this country. But for whatever reason, he found his outlet to be gardening. And he spent a lot of time in our backyard. And I always remember him talking about a guava tree that was like his prize plant. And so the memory for me is always reflecting on, he brought me this guava that was about the size of my head. And in a lot of ways that really encompassed all the hopes and aspirations my family had in coming to this country. And it's a little disappointing because at the same time, he never received or earned his U.S. citizenship until 2 years before his passing. Not because he didn't want to. From the very beginning, it was always his goal to earn his American citizenship. Because whether he liked it or not, he was here to stay. And he wanted to be a part of this country. But unfortunately, because of the language barriers and all the institutional barriers in terms of getting citizenship, that wasn't possible until his later years. And so when I think about the issue of aging and the Older Americans Act, it's 2 things. It's 1, the guava, and 2, it's uncharted territory. For the vast majority of ethnic minorities in this country, the issue of aging is very uncharted in terms of an aging population that, 1, the system isn't entirely established or built to withstand. Specifically in the Older Americans Act, it makes 2 references to communities of color. First is actually a pretty good one in referencing historically serving Hispanic institutions. And the other reference refers to older Americans with limited English proficiency. And so you can see how these broad definitions within the Older Americans Act doesn't fully articulate the true diversity of not only California, but the rest of the country. But in looking at the issue of diversity and looking at different ethnicities and race, it's kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, the lack and this so-called color blindness in approaching the issue of aging creates a lot of deficiencies within our system. Unfortunately, services are not narrowly tailored, are not culturally competent to address the various needs within these ethnic communities. But the other side of it, if what's happened is that if we over-define the issue of race and ethnicity and are too reliant, what happens is that we end up pitting communities against one another. We've seen in the Social Security discussion the pitting of older communities against younger communities. By using the definition of limited English proficiency, this unfortunately excludes African Americans who have significant health disparity needs in the aging field. And so when we walk the line of defining various ethnic groups, I think it's really important that we take a narrow focus in terms of looking at our various communities. And in terms of being in the state of California, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the wonderful economic state that we're all in. And when it comes to the delivery of services and making sure that money is used effectively, I think in terms of cultural competency is a wonderful opportunity for us to not only improve the delivery of the services that the folks in this room provide, but also improving the lives of people like my grandfather. I think when it comes to cultural competency, a lot of work is done locally. In the Southeast Asian community, for example, 90% of the elders that grow up in the community actually live at home, which is significantly different from other populations. This is the result of various reasons. One, just comfort level. It's a lot easier to age in your community and in your homes around familiar people and around people that understand the struggles that you're going through, that don't make you feel like you're in uncharted territory. And so as we move forward with the Older Americans Act, the idea would be to focus more in terms of developing community access and improving cultural competency to allow individuals to age in their comfort zone so that it isn't uncharted territory. And I think in terms of the care delivery system, I think this is a significant opportunity for the Older Americans Act to improve upon. The issue of mental health care was briefly mentioned in the amendments made in 2006. It was the first time that mental health had ever been brought up in the Older Americans Act. But as we all know, mental health is a significant issue in all populations or ethnic groups in the Asian community. But it's something that's unique, for example, in the Southeast Asian community. While elders might not complain of the traditional signs of depression or feeling lonely or sad, they usually don't articulate those types of things. For example, my grandma never articulates feeling lonely. What she does articulate is the fact that she's feeling aches and pains and stomach aches. And a culturally competent caregiver will recognize that as clear signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. In actuality, having escaped a war-torn country, leaving everything behind, and entering a country that's completely foreign. And to, unfortunately, oftentimes these issues are not diagnosed because caregivers aren't trained in a way that allows them to recognize these types of issues. And so as we move forward, I think it's significant to look at the issue of cultural competency as a vital aspect of the Older Americans Act. Whether we like it or not, the population of diverse elders is significantly growing. By the year 2050, the people of color, elders that are people of color will make up 46% of the total aging population. And so as we move forward in terms of public policy, I think this is a significant and wonderful opportunity to make the changes so that we're ahead of the curve. And I think in conclusion, I think, again, referencing back to the wonderful state of California, and I always look at it as the best of times and worst of times. In a lot of ways, the Older Americans Act offers us the best of times, an opportunity to make significant changes in our communities that benefit our elders and help them live successful and healthy lives. But the dark side of the issue, the worst of times, is the fact that for diverse communities of color, and especially the elder populations, social services across the board are being targeted for elimination. The California Cash Assistance Program for Immigrants is targeted for elimination by the governor. Programs that provide sole incomes for elders is being targeted for wholesale eliminations. And so while we're discussing the Older Americans Act, I think it's important to keep in the back of minds that there are significant challenges ahead. But at the same time, it's up to us to meet that challenge. And that's all.
Thank you, and good morning again, and thank you all for coming. I just want to do a couple housekeeping things before I talk briefly about the Older Americans Act. I do want to thank USC again for this wonderful venue and all the support that they've given us to put the forum together, particularly Dean Davison, Maria Henke, John Pinus, Emily and Greg, who have been very helpful, and so many others to put this on. And also a thank you to Patrick and Jonathan for traveling here to represent Age4Action. Obviously, we came to LA because we know this region has a wealth of leaders in the areas that we're looking at, service or volunteers, older workers, and lifelong learning. This is our sixth of six forums. We've done forums also in Las Vegas where we focused on the nutrition program of the Older Americans Act and how they use older workers and volunteers. Philadelphia, St. Paul, Minnesota, Denver, and St. Louis. All of these forums we are pulling together, and we will write a report. And any of you who have shared your email addresses or contact information will be emailed a copy of that report. That report will come under the Age4Action Network title, and we hope to have a whole list of recommendations then in that report that we'll share with Congress next year when they begin the reauthorization process of the Older Americans Act. I was to give you a little summary of the Older Americans Act. I'm not going to do that. You have the materials. I think you have a sense of the range of programs that it provides, from nutrition to long-term care ombudsman, senior centers, etc. Suffice it to say, the Title V program, which has been mentioned for older workers, is key. There's a small program under Title IV for civic engagement, and there is reference to lifelong learning opportunities under Title III, but it's not a significant program that has been funded over the years. What we will be doing at the very end is reminding you that you've been given a survey. This survey, we're going to hear from our panelists. We're going to hear from many of you during the public comment period, we hope. This survey gives you an individual opportunity, if you don't speak at the end, to also give us some information, some data about your experiences. And that survey was put together by the Age4Action staff and then faculty and graduate students at the George Warren Brown School of Social Work in St. Louis. And this will provide us with valuable data that will also be incorporated in the report. So I ask you to complete that. We'll collect the surveys at the end of the session, and Patrick will remind you once again, but we really want that data. So let me close with that, and thank you again for coming in USC, and we will be moving now to Jonathan. You're going to lead us through our first panel.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So the first panelist I'd like to introduce today is David Guler, who's director of the Rebuilding Together in Pasadena. Rebuilding Together's mission is to promote the collaboration on projects and pursuing region-wide funding opportunities for the affiliates and facilitating the formation and initial operation new affiliates that focus on keeping low-income and disabled and elderly homeowners in their homes in warmth and safety. I'm not going to spend too much time, so I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, David.
Can everybody hear me? I had another career before I did this. It's too boomy. RT Pasadena is an affiliate of a 200-plus affiliate network across the United States that was founded in 1988. I actually found out about it through Remodeler magazine, and I wrote a letter to the people in D.C. saying, if you ever come to Pasadena, I'm interested. And in 1988, they got this thing going. In 1992, people from Pasadena that were putting it together contacted me. And we came to put our affiliate together. We originally were known as Christmas in April. And
okay.
I personally became active and started working with it. I was a house captain and then joined the board, and then I became president for a number of years. Christmas in April started out as a grassroots paint and cleanup operation, working mostly with homeowners, but also for some nonprofits. In the late 90s, the discussion began about changing our name to better fit what we were doing, and so that we wouldn't have to go through this whole speech about Christmas and then April and that whole thing. Along with the name change, at the same time, we entered into a strategic discussion within the organization to begin focusing a repair program that would begin delivering services to people with disabilities and to the elderly, particularly with a priority to assist the frail elderly. And at that time, in that process, we started reaching out to other people. We began seeking partners, which is a mode we continue with. And that would be people such as various senior centers in the various cities we worked in, AOA offices, AARP, and also gerontological experts such as the Andrus Center here, which I've had the pleasure of working with John and Maria for a number of years, and I've tortured them by having them come up to Pasadena and work on some of our projects. It also began a campaign for all of us within our affiliate network to educate ourselves about the problems of aging and access, especially the issue of safety in and out of the home. We have several national initiatives now that we've been working on for the last few years. One is Safe and Healthy Homes, which involves a look at getting rid of problems within the home in terms of access and safety, but also things like lead paint, asbestos, and that sort of thing. We have a green initiative in which we are attempting to do repairs that make the home less expensive for the person to be living in them, so that when we replace lighting fixtures so that seniors can see better within their homes and resolve vision problems, the fixtures are energy efficient so that we're not putting a further burden on their income. And then we have an initiative, we call it our Veterans Initiative. Initially, it was aimed at catastrophically disabled veterans coming back from the wars in the Middle East, but now it is expanded due to a partnership with Sears and Kmart to service all veterans. And once again, we tried to aim that initiative as what you might call the greatest generation, Senator Waford's generation, the people now that are starting to need some help, that have lived proudly on their own, and need to be able to stay safe within their homes. Of course, for me, this was just not an academic issue. Life is a process. When I began working with Rebuilding Together, Christmas in April, I was a young contractor in my 40s. 20 years later, I'm finding that I have a lot more in common with our elderly recipients than I do with our younger volunteers. And this has become a process of education for myself. And I guess that Maria asked about this is where we should put in successes in providing older Americans with the opportunity to serve. So I guess that now I'm morphing into that myself. Our program is long, utilize seniors as board members around the country and within Pasadena, as project leaders, or as we call them, house captains, and also as homeowner companions. These are peers that we bring into the project to hold the owner's hand, to make sure that they just are not overcome by the fact that dozens of strangers are running inside and outside of their homes. And they also elicit from them the things that they really need to get done, not just what we observe, but what they really need to get done. What our program does is evaluate the homes in regards to its general state of repair and then assess what's needed in terms of access and safety. All of our repairs are done at no charge to the homeowners, and much of the grunt work is done by volunteers under professional direction. Examples of tasks we complete in addition to painting and cleanup are installation of grab bars and railings, widening of doorways, improved lighting, replacement of drafty doors and windows, and construction of wheelchair ramps. Some of these things we have had assistance with through the Andrus Center by seminars that they have sponsored in conjunction with the National Association of Home Builders and other trade professionals to resolve these issues. All of this is done with the goal of keeping the homeowner where they want to be in their own home and keeping them safe in that home by paying particular attention to falls prevention. I'm sure by now everybody in this room knows the fact that once you hit age 65, the most likely way you are to pass away is through a fall or complications from a fall. And that's what we're working against right now. In doing this, we are finding that our major obstacles to fulfilling our mission continue to be establishing trust and credibility among our recipient population, for which we are utilizing our community partnerships, and also overcoming the problem of senior isolation. It is often the case that those who need our services the most are the ones that are the hardest for us to reach. They're just not out there in the community. Even more than the question of finding resources of money, materials, and skilled workers, these remain our biggest challenges. We really want to focus our program not to get to the person that gets in the line first, but the person that needs the services the most. Our suggestions for improving the OAA would be to work to break down the barriers of our youth-centered national culture that is thrown up regarding the issues of aging, for us to be part of a national dialogue that drags these issues out of the senior ghetto and encourages all of society to consider these conditions that are occurring as inevitable, natural, and resolvable with imagination and empathy. One of the things I've learned a lot in working with our recipient population. Our hope is we can be a part of this solution and that we will continue to draw on our senior volunteers as an essential part of our program as a source of both inspiration and new ideas as we move forward. Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Donna Benton. Dr. Benton is currently serving as the director of the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center, which is one of 11 caregiver resource centers across the state. The Caregivers Resource Center's mission is to help families and communities master the challenges of caring for adults with brain-impairing conditions such as Alzheimer's disease, stroke, Parkinson's, and traumatic brain injury. In addition to being the director, she's also a licensed clinical psychologist. So, Dr. Benton.
Thank you. I want to thank the Age4Action Network and the USC Gerontology Center for having this panel. It's really wonderful to have all of these organizations together hosting this really significant forum. Now, the Older Americans Act, as we've heard and we know from experience, is one of the most significant pieces of legislation that addresses the needs of older adults and their family caregivers. Title IIIe is one of the newest parts of the Older American Act, and that's the National Family Caregiver Support Program that provides the grants to states to develop a variety of services for family caregivers. And when I say family caregivers, these are the people who 80% up to 90% or more are providing unpaid services to everybody else here. This includes information and assistance about services under the Older Americans Act, individual counseling, organization of support groups, caregiver trainings, respite to provide families a temporary relief from caregiving responsibilities, and any kind of supplemental services like home care, home adaptations, and meals, transportation, on a very limited basis to complement the care provided by family and other informal caregivers. Now, national estimates show that about 44 million Americans over the age of 18 provide to older people and adults with disabilities in our communities. The estimated, now I want everyone to really hear this one, the estimated economic value of this long-term care support in 2007 was $350 billion. This is the unpaid volunteers. This is the backbone of our society. More recently, it was stated in a report by the National Alliance of Caregiving and Evercare that the value of the services family caregivers provide for free when caring for older adults is estimated to be around $375 billion. So as time goes on, this value keeps going up. And just to put it in perspective, this is twice as much as is actually spent on home care and nursing home services combined. That's $158 billion. So that's what's actually spent. So as you can see, the backbone of the long-term care system are families and friends. And I imagine, well, I can just ask, how many people here are family caregivers? Have somebody. That's about it. And how many people have relatives who are family caregivers? Yes. 1 in 4. This is really an issue that's for all Americans. Now, California, not surprisingly, has the highest number of family and informal caregivers of any state in the nation. We have about 3.4 million caregivers in California. That translates to about $36 billion in unpaid funding. Now, in 2011, for the Older Americans Act budget, we have about a $48 million increase for the National Family Caregiver Support Program. And I want to applaud that proposal in funding. And you have to look at this, you say, well, wow, how did they get a 30% increase? Well, it's been flat funded since it came into existence in 2000. So you're kind of like taking a little bit. You're not really getting a full 30% because we've had decreases every year. There's also a $2.5 million increase for the Lifespan Respite Care Act that only received 1 year of funding since it was enacted. And so hopefully this will be the first year that Lifespan Respite actually has some funding. Now, as you know, the typical caregiver, maybe you don't, but I'll just say the typical caregiver is a 49-year-old woman who's caring for maybe a 69-year-old widowed mother who lives alone. The caregiver is employed and probably has children or grandchildren under 18, so she has multiple responsibilities. When we're looking at how we want to help this population within the Older Americans Act, we do have to always recognize, which we've already discussed a little bit, cultural diversity within the families. But I do have some very specific recommendations that I'd like to get to. Too often we hear that caregivers express a lot of guilt, and they have a lot of emotional issues that are not being addressed within the programs that are being served. We try to give the meals and maybe we get somebody in the home, but a lot of the caregivers really need that emotional support. So our programs need to emphasize the mental health aspect and deal with that with the caregivers to help with their anxiety. It also really needs to focus on the caregiver not as an assistive device, but the caregiver as themselves and whether or not this is an appropriate role for them. I remember just 2 weeks ago, a woman called our office. She's 85 years old, and she called to say that she was a caregiver. And I'm like, who are you caring for? My mom, she's 105, and she's driving me crazy. So we're seeing more and more older adults caring for older adults. And when you're still a child at 85 caring for your parent, it's going to hit you, and you need that support. So some of the recommendations, and I'll get these out very quickly because I have like 30 seconds. We need to foster really the development and delivery of a caregiver assessment protocol that goes across all settings. So to help people transition from hospital to home and back into the community agencies. We need to encourage the primary care settings to have more understanding and actually identify family caregivers so that maybe within the Older Americans Act we can use some of that funding to really help work with the primary care settings. We need to look at some of the limitations that are in 3E that do not include help for people who are caring for someone with stroke, which is a very large population. and particularly in the minority populations? And also, what about an older adult who's caring for somebody with traumatic brain injury? This doesn't get covered. So you have 80-year-olds who may still be caring for someone, and I think they're going to cut off my mic, obviously. Funding should, and we should also include funding for ongoing training and support of staff and volunteers in local programs, both at the state and national level, and continue to look at evidence-based training. And I hope I have more time later for questions. Thank you.
Finally, we have Nicole Kaplan. Nicole has over 25 years of experience in the field of aging, with her primary emphasis being program development for community-based services that enable older adults to remain as independent as possible in their homes and communities. Nicole is also the chair of the Independent Transportation Network of Greater Los Angeles, or ITN Greater LA, an organization dedicated to providing a community-based, community-supported, economically viable, and consumer-oriented quality transportation service for seniors and adults with visual impairment. So, all yours, Nicole, take it away.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me here today. Just to say, Monica White was supposed to be here, but she is stuck in Minneapolis. So I'm going to be speaking, I've spoken to her and sort of incorporate some things that she and I had spoken about. But in terms of transportation and mobility for older adults, this is really a national problem with a local solution. And you really have to look on the local level in terms of what you're going to do to meet the transportation needs of older adults. I'm going to talk briefly about ITN, and this is a model that was started 15 years ago in Portland, Maine. There are now 17 affiliates across the United States, and ITN Greater LA was the first affiliate. There's one in San Diego, and the next one to come in California is in Monterey, California. It's actually a program, and I feel very fortunate in some way that we are in California, because California is a very friendly state for these type of transportation programs. Many other states had to get legislation which enabled them to provide volunteer-based transportation. So at this moment in time, and also let me mention, I am a volunteer with ITN. I work for Motion Picture and Television Fund, who has partnered with ITN to offer transportation services to entertainment retirees in the western part of Los Angeles. This program currently serves a 64 square mile area, all of the west side of Los Angeles. And if anybody has any questions exactly where that is, I can, provide that. But all the way from the Palisades through Santa Monica, Culver City, Mar Vista, Palms, West LA. Again, we serve people over 65 and those with visual impairments. Most of the clients that are served by this program are over the age of 75. This is a frailer population. This is a population of individuals that really need the escorted part of transportation. It's what we call door through door, arm through arm. So the volunteers who are recruited and trained and vetted for this program use their own cars, and they transport the members of the program, and they drive them. It's 24/7 on demand. Now, most people do not use it late at night, but there are certainly members of the program that use it to go to a health club, go to the movies, go to dinner. It's really the part of transportation that often gets neglected in some of the publicly funded programs, because it not only provides rides of necessity, but it provides quality of life rides. And that is really the important part for older adults, because otherwise they would be stuck in their homes. Somebody might tell them, well, we can only do it between this time and this time, and they want to go to a movie or they want to go to their church. They don't want to have to rely upon everybody else to pick them up. So it really offers that aspect of transportation. It is as close to mimicking being a driver in a car, though they're a passenger. So they're driving in a regular vehicle. There are also part-time paid drivers that are employed by the program that fill in for the time that that volunteers are not available. And some of the unique features of the program are that if somebody has a car, they want to donate the car to the program, that car is evaluated, where you don't necessarily use Kelley Blue Book, but you evaluate what the car is worth to the program. The program takes the car, and that money that's been determined and agreed upon goes into their transportation account. There is no exchange of money. There's no tipping. They receive a bill at the end of the month. The average ride is $10, and it costs the program approximately $20 to offer the ride. So there's fundraising, grant writing. Family members are so grateful that they will, write checks and help to support the program. So, and in terms of, I know I had a favorite story, and I guess I should tell that story, but when we talk about quality of life rides, one of the members, Laura Trejo, had said, "Oh, be sure and tell that story." He wanted to go on a date. And I drove him once, and I said, "Well, I guess you could do that." And then I said, "How are you going to meet somebody?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to go ahead and do something on eharmony.com. So he did. He put some kind of posting on there several weeks later, and I knew I wanted to be the person that would drive him. He called ITN. The dispatchers called me and said, "Well, you get your chance. You're going to drive him." I said, "Okay." So I picked him up and at his home, and we went to pick up his date, and he went out to dinner. I said, "You can have a cocktail. Just don't come back drunk, but you certainly can have a cocktail because you're not driving." So those are the kind of things that, make somebody's life full. And I think that in terms of the Older Americans Act, my recommendations would be to use some of the money to actually, as seed money to develop programs like this, replicate programs like this. I think volunteer-based transportation programs are incredible. And again, California is very friendly to these programs. And the other thing, and something that Laura mentioned, is really to break down the silos, the funding silos, so that you can be more flexible in terms of funding some unique and innovative type programs. Thank you so much.
We're going to have to, unfortunately, run through the Q&A really quickly, so I will just jump right into it. David, the success of RT has been fantastic, especially in the San Gabriel Valley. The impacts have definitely been felt in Pasadena and even beyond. What do you think are some of the challenges in terms of trying to replicate the type of work RT is doing in other cities?
I think the key thing is that you need to have a diverse board that is not most of the people in this room, because I think a large portion of you are Rolodex people. And when something needs to be done in your community, you're on that list. Well, you're not going to be available to work for us. We just would want to consult with you. You need to get some people that are, this is something brand new, and our board is composed of those folks mostly, because as probably in her program, you kind of labor in obscurity. You need somebody that just is committed to that. So that's an important thing, to find those folks. The other thing, as I said, is that the key to running a successful program is to find the right recipients, because what you want to do is provide a project where the volunteer comes and becomes committed to the mission, because they see it's a no-doubt person. They walk up, they see that little old lady, the little old man, the couple, whatever, the person in the wheelchair, and they say, "Well, I know why I'm here this Saturday. So I'm going to give my commitment, do my best, and if they call me up for some money, I'm going to send them a little check, and then I'm going to be ready for the next work." And that really is critical, and to do that, you can't have enough legwork. There's nothing you can do. You just have to really depend on community partners, churches, groups, and other concerned neighbors and neighborhood associations to give you those names to make that connection.
Sounds good. The next question is for Dr. Benton. In terms of talking about the Older Americans Act, as an advocate, it's always wonderful to be able to describe situations when programs have been successful. So can you point to some of the examples of programs or policies that have been effective in supporting family caregivers?
Well, particularly under the Older Americans Act, I think the flexibility of what's been under 3E has allowed for a lot of success within that program. Millions of caregivers have been able to be identified, because most people don't identify themselves as caregivers. So within the last 10 years, we have seen just a proliferation of more community services that are actually understanding and identifying family caregivers, friends. The amount of respite that has almost quadrupled nationally during the time that this program, they're just seeing respite care go up and up and up in terms of use of respite care. So more families are actually getting that break that they need sometime during the year, because caregiving goes on for an average of 8 years. So even if you get a day or two a year, which doesn't sound like a long vacation to anybody, but it certainly is something that many families did not have. California has been unique in that we've had a family caregiver program, which is under the Caregiver Resource Centers, for 24 years. So we have a lot of experience and a lot of success with our program. And one of the big successes is that we were replicated, and we were the model for the National Family Caregiver Support Program. It came out of California. So it was a success.
I had a follow-up to that, if you would. You mentioned the caregiver assessment and how important that is. Do you have the flexibility now under the program to do those assessments? We
can do the assessments, but I think it's kind of usually the way it's interpreted is it's very limited in the amount of time they want to provide for an assessment. And it really does take longer, and you need more time to go into the home.
Thank you.
Nicole, I think you touched on it a little bit in terms of the Older Americans Act. Are there any provisions that could be improved in the upcoming discussion or amendments that would make it possible for services like the ones that ITL Greater Los Angeles provide?
Well, actually, there is something. It was introduced by Senator Collins, and I don't have the number attached to it, but it will enable, within the Older Americans Act, approximately $5 million to, nationally, for the development of this type of model program. Though they can't name it as ITN, it is this type of model program, and it can be used as seed money to get these type of programs started. So, that would be one response. Again, I think that, the breaking down of silos and really looking at things creatively and not in little compartments is really, really important.
That's great. And I think just a quick shot down the line in terms of the Older Americans Act also provides funding in the 2006 amendments to help states and counties deal with the influx of the baby boomers. In terms of planning, what types of steps would you take in your respective areas to prepare for the upcoming wave?
I can start. One thing is we have to be able to look at more online programs. Some of the recent surveys have found that many of the baby boomers just start online for their information. So we have to have a way of having quality information online, because you can get a lot of stuff, but it isn't always quality. So there might be there's a need to kind of judge what's online and making sure that people get good services online for some of the baby boomers.
I would say, in terms of ITN, the baby boomers tend to be the volunteers for the program. And what it does is it really helps to educate them, not only in dealing with their parents about these issues, about cessation of driving and moving from the driver's seat to the passenger seat, but also themselves, their whole aging process. And most people do outlive their ability to drive by 7 to 10 years. So what better way to really understand it than to be a volunteer and see what somebody goes through and the loss of independence if you don't have something like this.
I think one of the things is to continue to provide greater recognition of safety issues in the home. I know when I started installing grab bars in people's homes 35 years ago, I got an almost uniformly negative response. People said, I don't want my house to look like a hospital. And there's been a significant change. People don't fight it. And when you suggest not just one, but maybe a couple and a little railing here or there, people are a lot more receptive now. And I think that that's not because they've gotten wiser or more experienced. I think that it's become more socially available to them, and they become more knowledgeable about it. And the stigma of that it's making you look like you're aged is being taken off. And I think that's really important, because what we really are about here is the quality of life, not just extending it for any reason, but extending the quality of it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for a fantastic panel. Though I believe there will be questions and comments at the end of everything. So if folks have questions, feel free to write them down and save them, and we'll give you an opportunity to ask. So thank you so much again.
Oh, okay.
So if the next panel on lifelong learning and for personal and community growth could come forward now. I think one of the things that we hear here in this discussion is that in all our programs there are teachable moments about the care being given to others and about our future in terms of care. And it's important for us to recognize that those teachable moments exist and to try to think creatively about how we can take advantage of it. Step over there, Jerry. Okay, our next panel is on lifelong learning for personal and community growth. We have three panelists to share with us their experiences and their thoughts about the Older Americans Act and how it might be facilitative in terms of their work. We have Jerome Walker, who is the Executive Director of the USC Emeriti Center College, Gordon Gibb, who is the Director of Social Services and Transportation at St. Barnabas Senior Services in LA, and Connie Robinson, Regional Executive Director for the Pacific Region Oasis program here in LA. We'll start off with Jerry Walker.
Thank you. Can you hear? All right. I've served 2 years as director of the USC Emeriti Center College, which is a component of the USC Emeriti Center, and in turn is a branch of the Office of the Provost. In this role, Ms. Judy Diaz and I organize enrichment classes for USC's retired faculty and staff and their spouses and friends. The classes scheduled for this fall include Introduction to Social Media, Facebook and Twitter, guided autobiography, piano for seniors, and a wisdom class taught by Professor Bob Knight, Associate Dean of the Davis School of Gerontology. In addition, we organize an intergenerational, interdisciplinary forum on global change with undergraduate and graduate students to discuss world events as they are presented in The Economist from London. Judy and I also run a speakers bureau for USC, arranging approximately 150 presentations and musical performances each year for alumni groups and about 25 senior centers and residential complexes for seniors. The USC Emeriti Center also provides important informational programs to USC's retirees and pre-retirees. Examples include a wellness program on health, a wellness program on financial and legal issues, and a series of programs featuring Helen Dennis on purposeful living after retirement. Another long-standing service to pre-retirees is a series of transition seminars that have been offered to USC older faculty and staff for many years. I would be remiss if I did not include the Retired Faculty Association and the Staff Retirement Association's programs for their members, which include monthly Sherry Hour featuring a presentation and discussion with active faculty, and regular tours of Los Angeles highlights. The success of the USC Emeriti Center College is found in the opportunity to enrich the minds of seniors and by giving them activities and information that are new to them and reasonably challenging. There's a wonderful article on age-proofing your brain in the July issue of the Consumer Report on Health, citing the 2009 report from the Bronx Aging Study. The researchers concluded that the more the participants engaged in mentally stimulating activities, reading, writing, working crossword puzzles, playing card games, participating in group discussions, or playing music, the longer they delayed the onset of rapid memory decline. We have reached thousands of older Americans in the community of Los Angeles, a couple thousand pre-retired faculty and staff at USC through the transitions programs, and hundreds of USC retirees have participated in special informational programs and enrichment classes. In terms of the Older Americans Act and changes, older Americans must have more access to mentally stimulating activities. Title III, the Supportive Services to Senior Centers, says that programming may include recreational, educational, social, or service-oriented programs, but the educational programs appear to be underdeveloped. These are quality of life opportunities. Title III has a disease prevention and health promotion services. Supposed to provide educational programs about nutrition, chronic illness management, drug usage, and other medical issues as a source of primary prevention. Less than 1% of the 2009 AOA appropriations were used for primary prevention. Title VII, Vulnerable Elder Rights and Protection Activities, provides programs to prevent elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation. States are required to carry out activities to make the public aware of ways to identify and prevent abuse and exploitation. Educational programs to increase public awareness of ways to prevent crime should be expanded to include education about economic and financial abuses, such as reverse mortgages. You can take me aside and ask me about that one. I sued Transamerica Corporation on behalf of my father. Title VII, Vulnerable Elder Rights Protection Activities, was given less than 1% of the 2009 AOA appropriation. So key learning opportunities for older Americans are appallingly underfunded in the current AOA. Thank you.
Next is Jerome Gibb from St. Barnabas. Garden Gibb, sorry.
After hearing that presentation, I don't mind to be associated with Jerome. Can I join your group?
Of course.
I thank you for the opportunity to present today some of the services that we and some of the history that we have as St. Barnabas Senior Services given to the MacArthur Park and westward to the La Brea area as well, Hancock Park area, over the last 102 years. We're a non-sectarian senior service multipurpose center that actually started where today the Biltmore Hotel is. We started in a basement of a basement of a church rather, of an Episcopal church, of which we owe our origins. And we were an outreach to homeless seniors, which is a painful thought and a painful reality that continues today. Those two seem to be oxymorons, but they're not. We have, over the years then, we have morphed in response to the need of seniors that we've come in contact with, but we have done that within the neighborhood of the Pershing Square area, now up in the MacArthur Park area, now for 102 years. But in the last decade, we have been focusing much more on adding activities to the core of our work, which has always been social services and the delivery of services such as transportation, nutrition in the form of 6 congregate meal sites throughout the city, Meals on Wheels, but also we have a grocery shopping program. For those who are on Meals on Wheels, you wouldn't think that they would need to have grocery shopping on one hand. On the other, have you ever tried to entertain with a Meals on Wheels meal? A little hard. And of course, we all go to grocery stores for more than just food. So enabling seniors to be able to feel like they have a fuller life while at times having the limitation either because of economics or because of their health and mobility enables a sense of wellness that goes beyond just medical wellness. Our activities that we have begun to expand into besides the core of our social service activities are some of the following. We have added to our program an adult day health care program over the last 5, now going into 6 years. And that has spawned a need for volunteers. And we have been very, very fortunate over the years to be able to both recruit volunteers but retain volunteers. Volunteers in the form truly of volunteers, no pay, but volunteers in the form of senior companions, and volunteers, at least to us, but in the form of Title V workers. And we have been fortunate also in having Title V workers also transition, which is really at the heart of the Title V program, among other considerations, of hiring those same persons as full-time staff in various positions within the multipurpose center that we are. We have also developed a film program. We have taught seniors how to use the cameras and how to do editing, how to do storyboarding to tell their stories. And then we had a film festival that we were able to have for the community so that the community would know not only their stories, but they would have the pride of seeing a history and a panorama of those stories represented in front of them. And the seniors just had to be peeled off the ceiling. We also developed a cyber cafe. It must be understood through the help of USC. It was a USC intern who came out and felt that there was the possibility of teaching the computer to seniors. That at the time was just one computer with a number of interested seniors. That has since morphed into a cyber cafe that has recently received the Mind Alert Award from MetLife. So we hope that you'll come by and take a look at that. We know that with the baby boomers coming, that we're going to have to expand that cyber cafe. So this fall, we're adding 2 more computers to our existing 8 to make it 10 computers. It'll also be wireless, knowing that those who will be coming will be bringing laptops, so that we will be a hotspot, a Wi-Fi hotspot, besides being a social service hotspot for seniors and their caregivers as well. We also offer movies at noon of various backgrounds because we are intentionally a multilingual center. It's a cacophony of different languages being spoken and ethnicities represented. And so we try to represent that in the movies and then followed up once a week with a discussion, which is a little harder with multilingual representation, but still, nonetheless, it's a wonderful challenge. And we try to have it be a way of having the senior be paying closer attention to the storyline, being able to learn from each other about what they observed, and particularly ethnic conditions that might be represented with a particular storyline. The movie this week is going to be called Mother. It's just was released on DVD. It's a Korean movie, outstanding. I hope you'll see it just on your own. I have no financial investment in that, but it's a wonderful movie. But interestingly enough, as we move to more ethnic movies, those who are English speakers have found that the ethnic movies are even more enjoyable to them because they get taken beyond themselves in those movies, so that they've begun to read the subtitles. And it's been particularly helpful for those of our ESL classes to be able to read the subtitles. Some of the challenges that we're facing, and I'm seeing the hook that's coming from the side here. Some of the challenges that we are facing certainly are employment for seniors. As Director for Social Services, I have both the honor and also the painful reality of hearing the calls of cry for help that they're going to be losing their apartment because they don't have enough money, because the rent came up, or they were overpaid supposedly by SSA. Now they have to have a deduction from their income, and at $800 a month, that's a little hard to take. So that certainly is a challenge to be able to have the senior have increased numbers of available spots for Title V, but also for monies for fall prevention programs. Because what we found in providing a fall prevention program, both first for English speakers, but now in this past year for monolingual Korean and Spanish speakers, is that that's also become a volunteer program and a work program. And that seems odd, except to say this, that seniors have found that in being able to have the confidence that they're not going to fall, they're now having more confidence to get out of the house, take the ride on the taxi or the public transportation, and start to volunteer in a way that they thought they never could. Or to be able to get a job, they could supplement their SSI income and be able to be gainfully employed instead of told you're a fall risk. We can't employ you. So I guess in brief and in conclusion, I would say one of the biggest things that Older Americans Act can do for MPCs such as ourselves would be to increase the funding for fall prevention. And we certainly are indebted to the Fall Prevention Center of Excellence here at USC with John. And that's how we got started, but since have been a success story of that program and have gone on our own, if you will, but also for Title V support as well, so that Title V funding can provide persons to stay in their homes independently as long as they can possibly do so with that kind of support. And I thank you.
Thank you, Garden. And the next speaker then is Connie Robinson, the Regional Executive Director for Pacific Region Oasis.
That sounds like feedback. Oasis is a national nonprofit lifelong learning collaboration of centers. There are 26 centers nationwide. Our headquarters is in St. Louis. And here in the local Los Angeles area, or greater Los Angeles area, we have 3 centers, one in Baldwin Hills, one in Westside Pavilion, and one in the Lakewood Long Beach area. We were founded about 28 years ago, and we were founded based on the recognition that it takes 3 primary factors for older adults to stay healthy and engaged within their communities. And that's brain fitness, and through that we offer arts and humanities classes, technology classes, as well as educational day and overnight trips. We offer physical fitness and health and wellness classes, and community service opportunities. Those are the 3 areas that we found were necessary through research: brain fitness, physical fitness, and civic engagement. So we offer not only volunteer opportunities and community service opportunities within the organization, within our centers, but also within the community that are intergenerational. And we truly are a learning center for older adults. It's similar to a community college, except that we combine. It's an experiential center. So instead of just offering classes, they come there for social interaction. We actually have catalogs. So it feels like a college campus in a way, but they come and they intermingle, and the social aspect we found is very key. We also survive on partnerships, and I'm actually honored that I'm sitting with 2 of my partners right now. USC offers classes at our center. They offer speakers, thank you. And we just partnered with St. Barnabas to offer both falls prevention courses, and thank you again, Dr. Prinos, as well as we're part of that wonderful cyber cafe, and he's right, if you haven't seen it, it is awesome. So we have nationally approved and standardized curriculum that Microsoft has approved that is geared specifically for older adults, that will be also taught not only in our own centers but around the community and other centers. We partner with Partners in Care and other organizations that provide screenings and health and wellness seminars. We partner with senior centers to offer our courses in their locations, also in senior housing facilities and churches or other organizations where older adults participate or live. When we do that, those are grant-funded opportunities. Those are things that most of the time the members who attend when we go out into the community, they cannot pay for these classes. So we have to have grants to be able to cover those. In our centers, we do have some program fees that help offset the expenses. But many of the things that we take out into the community are evidence-based health programs, technology programs. Both of those require instructors, trained instructors that are typically trained and funded by Oasis, either directly from program revenue or grants or donations. So the need is there, and we can't always meet it due to the lack of staff or instructor resources. And of course now, especially partnering with St. Barnabas, multilingual, bilingual instructors are definitely needed. I have made a tiered observation. It's an observation of the tiered participation we get at Oasis, and that's really where our need has become, we're finding. The observation is that we attract three different types of members. The baby boomers, the new retirees, they are extremely active, they're technologically savvy, they're community service oriented, they want to stay engaged, they don't want to have to work, but they still want to work. So they're civically engaged. Their physical fitness activities that they participate in, it's high intensity. So we find that to be our greatest group of volunteers. We call that our baby boomers or new retirees. Settled and relaxed is what I call the second tier. They've been retired for a little longer. They are engaged more in the arts and humanities classes, low to moderate physical fitness activities. They like to participate in the day trips and the screenings. They're interested in technology, but a little bit afraid of it, and possibly some community service. So we also get volunteers from there. However, that same group is having to return to work without the skills. So we're trying our best to train them. That's where our technology program is so important. And then the slowing down group. They're really slowing down. They take low-intensity physical fitness classes, if at all, but they're there really for the health and wellness seminars, for the screenings. They desire the technology to keep in touch, but they are unable or afraid to participate in it. We can see that slowdown. And one of our biggest challenges is that there's no bridge. When those members are part of Oasis, they feel like an Oasis member. They come there to be social and to take classes. As they slow down, they can't necessarily feel it, although it's very obvious. We can see it. And making that person or helping that person transition to a senior center that can now meet their needs, or they fall into the caregiver category where their family members are taking care of them and they don't realize that they're transitioning into that group is difficult. Of course, the other senior centers don't have funds to recruit them or come after them, so they're not looking to find more members. But having a bridge, when we start to see that decline, having a bridge to be able to say, Oasis feeds those names and those people into that bridge that then calls them and starts to do that home visitation or to check on them because they don't consider themselves a senior center member. They consider themselves an Oasis member who's no longer able to participate in classes. It's a challenge, and they get lost in the system. That causes, obviously, a financial burden on everyone. It causes a care burden on their caregivers. And those are the types of areas where we can see the Older Americans Act really stepping up to create that bridge. The other two areas are just very, very basic. We need more trained instructors. It's, how do we, if we take our program, which is national and approved and designed for older adults, out into the community, how do we train those instructors? How do we update that technology in the centers where we're participating? And the final one, which again seems very basic but is not, obviously with cuts everywhere, not having to keep an older adult trapped in their home or even in the four walls of a center is very important. So when they go on those educational day trips, they don't want to just go on their own. Many of them don't want to drive or don't want to go by themselves. They want to go with their social group. We no longer get that transportation where we would have had donated buses from the city or county. We no longer get those donated buses like we used to. And it's not as though we're a senior center that can just have a bus at our disposal to take them wherever we want them to go. So we've lost transportation, we've lost access to funding for instructors, and now we're seeing the need for that bridge to really be able to bridge the gap. Thank you.
Well, we're becoming sensitive to the time that we have here, so I'm going to have one general question for each of you panelists to if you could respond to it. You all represent some really excellent initiatives addressing various population groups, from exercising your hippocampus to being more preventive and promoting in terms of healthy behaviors, to being more engaged with your physical fitness and also your community as well. I'm wondering if the Older Americans Act has any potential for you in terms of developing centers of excellence or places where you can learn about best practices, where you could share your ideas so that others could take advantage of them and you could take advantage of others' ideas.
I can speak to that. I know these types of events are key, and the funding for this came from somewhere. But I try to participate as much as possible. We're now on a shoestring staff of 4 for 30,000 members. So we depend on volunteerism for me to be able to get out of the office and participate in whether it's a center or best practices or even a conference call is very, very challenging. So yes, having additional staff support or Title V workers that could help with the load while we participate in ways to make it better or create those, centers of excellence would be certainly helpful for us.
And I would say very similar with regard to St. Barnabas. One of the things I didn't mention was advocacy. And I think that St. Barnabas, with a coalition of other multipurpose centers, senior centers, and certainly with the assistance of the Department of Aging's leadership with Laura Trejo, have started an advocacy coalition, and that is also filtered to the grassroots level with seniors actually advocating at City Hall and in front of media. And I would love to be able to partner with we would like to be able to partner with other agencies that have that kind of emphasis, and that certainly has come by way of our new CEO over the last about 18 months. But other shared programs. I mean it sincerely. I think that I wasn't aware of your program, Jerome, and would love to participate at some level. I'm beyond the 50 years of age level, so I think I can participate chronologically, but also by a great intent. And being able to hear more about these programs with venues such as this would be very helpful.
I would love to continue a brief conversation I had with Laura just about a year ago. There's 16 multipurpose centers that provide nutrition services around the city of Los Angeles. I would very much like to be providing educational programs at those centers. I think it's a total of 31 centers sponsored by the Department of Recreation and Parks. I would love to make some inroads, but we are a staff of 2 in the Emeriti Center College, so to have some resources, to provide a small offset to people, volunteer faculty who may go out. We try to give them something to cover the cost of gas and a little bit of their time. So those are limitations. I have to throw in a plug for there's now a small association of programs, retirement centers in colleges and universities throughout the country. That association of retirement organizations in higher education is called a ROHI. We have a conference coming up in October. It is a possible source of coordinating the kinds of educational services that the USC Emeriti Center provides at other colleges and universities. Patrick knows a lot about this organization. So perhaps that is a group that could be brought into the network to help support these efforts.
Well, just a quick wrap-up. I think it's obvious that in your programs, each of you are successfully addressing the challenges you face through your collaborative partnerships. And so it might be interesting for the Older Americans Act to look at how could it better recognize, incentivize, and support those kinds of collaborations to extend the reach of all of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would Laura Trejo and Grace Cheng Braun and John Pinews join us at the panel table?
Where are you going to put me? Okay. You're over there, the beginning.
Laura Trejo is the general manager of the Los Angeles Department of Aging in Los Angeles. Laura?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you to the sponsoring and convening organizations for giving us this chance to engage in this, I think, very exciting national dialogue regarding the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act. I think that we are at one of those special moments in history where we can have a tremendous impact in how we look at this piece of legislation and how it will meet our needs in the coming decades. I want to tell you a little bit about Los Angeles. Most of you are familiar with probably the basic speech, but the city of Los Angeles is ranked second in the number of older persons in the United States. We have over 500,000 older persons over the age of 60 that live in our city. I heard Jonathan speak of the issues of diversity and how in 2050 the senior population would achieve about over a 40% rate of diversity. Well, let me tell you, the future is here because Los Angeles is about 48% diverse. It's different than the rest of California. So we are a living lab of what needs to be happening in the community and in the nation in terms of looking at models and best practices. We also have a unique challenge. Los Angeles has 2 area agencies on aging designated within the same county region. For many years, I think that was a negative issue, but I think that we've turned it around over the last few years in making it a positive factor for our community. We really are seeing that we have regional challenges that have to be addressed as a team. The city and county have to work together if we are to address the burgeoning growth of our population, because we represent 1/3 of all California seniors over the age of 60. They live here, folks. They don't live somewhere else. So these are our issues, our concerns, and I think that California could really be a trendsetter in terms of educating the national dialogue about the types of programs and policy directions that we would like to see embedded in the Older Americans Act. We also have some of the largest supportive social health care systems in the nation that exist in this community. And we have very little experience in working collaboratively with them. As systems, because they're so huge that I think we all become very overwhelmed at trying to figure out how to engage with public health, how to engage with mental health. We have to start doing that more purposefully. I think that we're going to have many opportunities with Affordable Care Act that will be provided to us to begin to establish a dialogue with our partners in health and other health-related services. The Older Americans Act, I think, is a very, very unique piece of legislation. Looking at it as a person of color and a gerontologist, it's a very inclusive legislation. It targets the most in need, the most underserved. So the language is there. One of the concerns that I have had over the last 25 years working in the Aging Network has to do with where are we discussing the issues of capacity building of that network. Mm-hmm. Yes, we are talking of the unique needs of older people and how they have to be addressed, but who provides for those services and how do we support them? My experience tends to be it's at the lowest common denominator where we tell the staff person, you have to be responsible for creating the best practice, and hopefully it will work, and they do it in isolation. And if it doesn't work, we get upset with them. And so I want to change that paradigm and say, you know what? The Older Americans Act has this great inclusive language, and now it has to have equally great language to talk about capacity building of a network. We have a growth in the population, yet we do not have the available staff resources to manage. I heard the colleagues speak about the lack of staff available. I also have to think about what happens if we have the money and we can't hire people, because I've been in that situation many times before. And that's, I think, an equally important challenge to look at this opportunity of the authorization to include some capacity building language that would bring resources to the local level so we can begin to look at how will we retrain and retool our staff to meet the needs of the changing demographics of our population and just the large size of the population that we have to serve will require that people think very differently, and that has to be part of training. We're also being challenged that we have to be more accountable for the social services that we deliver and their impact on the lives of older people. So the whole arena of measurement and outcomes and performance is something that we have to really make sure that the Act reflects with purpose. What is it that we will hold value, and how will we be ensuring that the Act holds us as a network accountable to that? I have a couple of recommendations that I would like to forward. I want us to start looking. We've been working with evidence-based models now for about 7 years at the city, and we find that we have seen, with partnership with Oasis Institute, we actually developed a model where we replaced senior volunteers that were trained for trained staff, and we actually got better outcomes. Dr. Wilbur evaluated our process and was actually, her quote was, "This is astonishing that it could be realized that way." So I think that we have to start looking at the opportunities of the aging population and saying, where are the skills that we need, and how could we utilize some of these folks that want to come back to work maybe on a part-time basis to create these new offerings in the community, because we would get, I think, better results. I'm also looking, how do we make sure, in California, we're losing the aging network, folks. Our programs and our funding is going away, and so we need to make sure that the aging network is there for the authorization when it occurs and for the future of this population. So there's a lot of work locally that we need to be doing, but I think that the Act also needs to talk about organizational need at the local level to AAAs as the conveners of the community. I think that that's what we're learning locally, that we need to be in lead to convene the greater provider networks, the advocacy networks, in order to create ensure that the voice of seniors is heard. We're also needing to look at the existing systems, and there has to be support in the Act because this requires staff support. How do we look at the existing systems that provide services in the community and begin to look at them in a different way? I've started to look at the opportunities that other systems bring to the table in trying to create an aging and disability resource center. I'll give you an example. Rather than going after the grant from the federal government, we actually decided that we were going to build one that would suit the needs of Los Angeles, rather than meeting one that would suit the needs of the federal government. And so in doing that, one of the things we discovered was that the resources were never going to be enough to meet the demands of our community. So our partners and how we looked at partners had to be very, very different. And so as a result, now we're partnering with public health, we're partnering with Social Security Administration, the public libraries. We're now in a partnership that's historic, 156 libraries working with the 2 AAAs as points of access in the community for information, which is what libraries do. And so begin to look, I think, at our environment and saying, where are the resources that the Aging Network has not tapped? And I think that that is part of the leadership that the Older Americans Act needs to bring to the local levels through the Aging Network. I think that this reauthorization discussion presents great opportunities. I look forward to the continuing dialogue with all of you at the local level. And I think that Los Angeles has a great opportunity to lead some major changes in the language that we will have to address over the next decade. So I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
I hope all the panelists and everyone here that has specific recommendations for the Act will make sure to send it to Brian and through the sponsors here. Next is Grace Chang Brown, the President and CEO of Wise and Healthy Aging, Los Angeles.
Thank you. Good morning, soon to be afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today, and it's quite an honor to be bookended by these two powerhouses, if you will. Wise and Healthy Aging, just a little background for those. We are headquartered in Santa Monica. It is a nonprofit social services organization that has been in the community for 43 years. Wise and Healthy Aging is the resulting merger of November 2007 of Wise Senior Services and Center for Healthy Aging. And really the hallmark of the programming that's offered and services is the Ombudsman program, which covers the city and county of Los Angeles, which is the largest Ombudsman program in the nation. So there are more long-term care facilities in Los Angeles County, within the city and the county, than all the other counties combined in California. And we're considered a best practice within the state of California and a beneficiary of the Older Americans Act funding in that regard, and also our work in elder abuse prevention, and also those other areas as our sister agency, St. Barnabas, with congregate meals, transportation. We have many of those programs also. So when I looked at the topic of our panel for today, Lessons from the Aging Network, I think that what I'm most impressed with, and as someone who is newer to this network, having been in the healthcare industry for 26 years before I moved into the social services realm 5 years ago, I would say that the face of the Aging Network is changing. And that what I'm most impressed with in the ability or the lessons that we've learned is to be adaptable and be as flexible as possible. When we take a look at the various silos, as someone had mentioned previously, the ability for people to look beyond their own personal agenda and to take a look at what that is that would be for the good of the community is very inspiring. I applaud the work that Laura and Cynthia Banks from the County of Community and Senior Services have done in bringing the work together of the two AAAs and the work that they've done. And there's more, because we also have, the Department of Mental Health that provides a lot of services for our older adults and our caregivers, that there's that opportunity for continued dialogue and such. But I think that as a service provider, I think that what I've seen among my colleagues is this resilience of not giving up, and in the face of quite a bit of despair. And I know that many of my colleagues wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, sort of with their minds churning of like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now? Because we've just heard now that the Adult Day, the ADCRC funding is going away, or the linkages went away, the state's ombudsman went away. So it just keeps coming and coming. And yet there is this resilience, and I think that the silver lining in all of this has provided us an opportunity to come together, not only to commiserate, but at the same time to really look for what are opportunities that are out there for us to work even more closely together. And I think that, Patrick, you had talked about the whole aspect of collaborative efforts and such. I think that it really is the wave that is to come. And even in taking a look at philanthropy, which a lot of our social services organizations rely on heavily, that the face of philanthropy for social services, for the aging, is also changing to where there is greater interest to participate in funding projects where it is evidence-based, that there are outcomes, that it shows that more than multiple organizations are coming together to work together. I know certainly in the field of the elder abuse prevention area, we've been very fortunate to work, under the Archstone Foundation grant funding process, in which we have many other, the forensic centers, the elder abuse activities, the various activities that are going on within the Southern California area is very rewarding, and others such as SCAN Foundation and such. And I think that is what there needs to be, so that we can keep moving forward in this regard, is that the face of the Aging Network is changing. And what we're also seeing is a back to a grassroots movement. to where that older adults and their caregivers are sort of taking things into their own hands. This is evidenced by the village effort that has occurred, that has moved across the country 9 years ago, starting up in Beacon Hill Village in Boston, that now we have over 100 of these villages that have sprouted up or in the midst of sprouting up. And we are very fortunate here in LA that Wise and Healthy Aging, under a hub and spoke model, has actually developed villages that are coming up in Mar Vista, in Santa Monica, Pacific Palisades, the Marina, Venice area, and there's one that is on its own, very grassroots, that is the Westchester Playa area. That whole aspect of helping people age in their homes, housing, which this gentleman is the expert on that we'll be speaking to. This whole notion of these naturally occurring residential communities, I think that is also part of the wave and what there is for us to come together to see how we can work with residents, with service providers, with those who are the private-public partnerships, and those who are the AAAs, definitely being the conveners of these.
John Pinews, professor here at this good school of gerontology.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here to participate in this exciting listening forum. You've done a lot of listening. We hope we'll have more time for interaction, both here and certainly at lunch. I got my start in the field of aging working for Vista, which was sort of a cousin or a relative of the Peace Corps, working on behalf of older people living in communities that were threatened by urban renewal during the 1960s. And then I moved to work and direct an area agency on aging that hadn't started before I got there. It was an interesting challenge of resources. We had resources, but we had no staff and a small board, and it grew. And the lessons that I've learned from that time to this haven't much changed, that older people prefer to age in place in their own housing and their communities. That hasn't changed. And the Administration on Aging took a step forward in the last reauthorization by funding community innovation programs for aging in place, and this brought services to these naturally occurring retirement communities, several of which have gotten funded in Los Angeles. A major shortcoming has been, however, how to address the issues of the physical environment, both in homes and in neighborhoods. And there are like 1 million older people who tell us that what they need are home modifications that they don't have. And David Guler has done a very good job of explaining why that's the case and some of the things we can do about it. I refer to this housing as Peter Pan housing. It was designed for people who are never going to grow up and never going to grow old. And that's true of a lot of our neighborhoods, too. They were never designed for people with disabilities or older persons in mind. We've been trying to retrofit them, and this is the 20th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It has had a significant impact, but nevertheless, there's so much more that needs to be done. I'm sure if you've watched older people, like myself, trying to cross the street where the signals are timed for cars and not for automobiles, it's a real challenge, even though they tell you there are 20 seconds left. You're thinking, am I a 15-second person or am I a 20-second person? Am I going to make it across? You got to do all these calculations with some help from technology. But nevertheless, we live in this housing that has cramped and slippery bathrooms, lack of wiring for the internet. If we expect older people to use it, we have a lot of homes that don't have wiring for it, unsafe steps, inadequate lighting. All these things make it hard to carry out tasks, to get out of your home, people out of their homes and socialize. To have those dates, you got to be able to get out of the house. And you know that, or to get your new companion to come into the house, whatever it takes. And we have all these hazards that contribute to falls, both in homes and out of the homes. We know we can reduce falls 30 to 40% with programs like Gordon and Connie described, fall prevention programs. And I think one of the things we've learned that we can apply to the Older Americans Act is we need to rethink the programs that we have. So we have a lot of exercise programs out there, but we can convert those and target them to people who are at high risk of falls. They're not the same exercise program that someone very active is going to engage in. We need special ones that focus on balance, strength, and mobility. No pun intended, but what we need to do in home modifications is to ramp up the programs that we have. You know, they are, rebuilding together is good, but it's relatively small relative to the need out there. We need to ramp up this. We do it sometimes. So I don't know if you're aware, but there's an energy program that's going to weatherize 2 million homes. I'll bet half of those are going to be lived in by older people. Why don't we have a companion program to modify those homes at the same time, to put in those ramps, grab bars, handrails? I mean, it just makes sense. We're letting these silos still run us, when in fact, fixing up those homes will allow people to stay, and if they save money with fluorescent bulbs, even better. So a companion program. We need to create a workforce of people able to make these changes. I would refer to them, and if you remember an old television program, by calling them the Mod Squad. We need people to go out there and make modifications, which could include volunteers, as David has mentioned. In conclusion, we need a new Aging in Place initiative in which the Administration on Aging works with other agencies such as housing and energy. These programs need to work together to be successful, to increase the availability of home modifications, to build better housing in the first place. We continue to build housing that will not work for the next generation of people who are going to grow old. Too many stairs, no grab bars, slippery floors. We're doing it all over again. In suburbs, no sidewalks. That continues to happen. We can't let this happen. We're wasting our money. It's much more sustainable to build it correctly in the first place. We need to create livable communities for everybody. That should be a goal of the Older Americans Act. And make fall prevention programs widely available. We need to see the links between housing and health, between neighborhoods and health. The Health Reform Act should acknowledge those connections. Such initiatives will support the current and future generation of older adults to maintain maximum independence in their homes and communities. That is a major mission of the Older Americans Act. We need to make sure it gets fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you. My one question to the panel is related to the two worlds that I've been part of, the national service world and the now aging, not just myself, but the Aging Network and the Older Americans Act. I'd like your comments on the connection or lack of it between those two and this hybrid that the vista in the war on poverty, the Title V, and the stipended senior foster grandparents, senior companions, and AmeriCorps, which is for all ages, including Experience Corps. The hybrid that is not volunteering of the unpaid, so-called by some champions or critics, pure kind, but this very low-cost, lean, but paid service. And it seems to me there's a possibility of more than a flirtation between the two, but a marriage in which the Kennedy Act that authorized national service, AmeriCorps, including VISTA, to go from 75,000 to 250,000 is a new resource that's, in a sense, up for grabs. And isn't there a need for a lot of that new resource to be used, one, for seniors to be participating, but two, themselves to be helping to serve the aging network in a whole variety of the programs we've been hearing about? That's a long way of saying your comment on these two acts and this hybrid that we haven't named well yet.
If I may add, so Wise and Healthy Aging actually is one of the oldest RSVP sites in West Los Angeles. We're the RSVP of Greater West Los Angeles. RSVP is Retired Senior and Volunteer Program that's under Senior Corps, that's under this federal arm that you speak of. And with 700 volunteers and with 50 plus MOUs with other nonprofits, we look to place those who are 55 and older in that traditional volunteer role. And what we're finding is, as you're hearing the word of civic engagement and such, is that younger, older adult population that are, it's not the slowing down group that our Oasis executive had noted, that are looking to still provide something. They want to give back, but at the same time, they're looking for something that is more enriching. And what we're seeing then is this group that is looking for either part-time or stipend work, realizing that their talents and skills are actually command a much higher level of compensation, if you will, in the real world, but they're not necessarily looking for full-time work. So I think that there is increasingly, I was just at a forum of the Corporation for National Community Service, which they brought together the AmeriCorps, Vista, RSVP groups together. And the thing that appears to be happening is that within the AmeriCorps stream, there appears to be a lot more focus and funding available to take a look at that. And so as we in the Aging Network look to how better to position ourselves, I think there are some intergenerational opportunities there to take a look at what we can do together. One of the areas that's noted is financial literacy with the economic times and with people living much longer, of people really coming up short and not knowing how to financially make ends meet. So that's actually one area. There's also the notion of entrepreneurship, and that those individuals who move into other chapters of their life wanting to start something totally new, and how they would go about doing something like that through some sort of a guidance process.
We'll leave it at that. There's a great answer.
There is a 10% set aside for older Americans in the Kennedy Serve America Act, and has not been interpreted with rules yet how it would apply. I've been favoring a large expansion of VISTA, partly because it has always had more than 10% seniors, and now the Peace Corps wants 50 plus. There's a new bill for volunteer service fellowships that would be 1 year, not 2 years, which Peace Corps requires. And I think there's a lot of ferment that needs the Aging Network to be creative partners in. That was the purpose of my question. Anything, John, before we turn over to the next panel?
I'm much in favor of those set-asides, because otherwise older people will be left behind. When I ran an area agency on aging, we had a lot of RSVP volunteers. Stipends certainly would have helped. But I married someone who was also a director of an area agency on aging. At our wedding, I'd say half the people were probably over 70 who were volunteers in those various programs. I'd like to see that continue and expand. I think it's an enormous resource, and stipends really help, because even paying for gasoline or public transit, anything just makes it a more legitimate, recognized role.
Thank you.
We're going to move to our last panel.
Yes, you.
I get to introduce our last panel, which is a panel of one.
Yeah, that's part of our fall prevention program.
Bob Blancato is well known in the aging world, and many of you may recall that he was the executive director of the White House Conference on Aging in 1995. In fact, we did a forum here that I organized with GSA, and Bob was part of that. In recent years, he's led the effort to secure the passage of the Elder Justice Act, which was included in the healthcare reform bill. Age4Action has not had a panel on the lead part of our mission, work, serve, learn, lead. And Bob is going to give us his perspective on this. And as a recipient of both the Claude Pepper Award and the Arthur Fleming Award over the years, he's quite qualified to do this. Bob?
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, everybody. I guess I'm the first one of the afternoon, and thank you for staying around. I appreciate that. Thank you, Age4Action. I commend everybody associated with this very interesting forum, and this turnout is tremendous. And I also commend the co-sponsors and the great statements that have preceded me on a variety of topics. My topic is leaders among us, people 50 years and over. I appreciate the fact they let somebody over 50 years and over take this panel on. But I've had an interest and involvement in this issue for some 30 years. But if I wanted to do a real short two-word description of great leaders over 50, all I have to say is Harris Waford. We have gone from mandatory retirement at 65 to when now mainstream media now says that in the corporate world, 80 is the new 50. Early in my career, I worked for two members of Congress who were in their 60s and 70s, and they were leaders, Mario Biaggi and Claude Pepper. My own experience with older workers is very positive. At the 95 White House Conference on Aging, I had a research director almost 80, two part-time front office staff well over 65, and a 70-year-old detailee from Orange County, California. I have faced no obstacles in the workplace due to age, happily, but with age comes different work opportunities, and suddenly I now see myself with the title of senior advisor more now than ever had in my life before. But obstacles do exist. Age discrimination still exists. We must do more to enforce the law we have. Cultural and gender considerations must be part of promoting opportunities for older persons to work and lead. Racism and sexism in the workplace should not be followed by ageism. As we all know, we lost a great champion with the passing of Dr. Robert Butler, who raised our national consciousness about ageism. He said it was just as sinister as racism or sexism, just not as focused on as much. Leadership, for some, is an inherited trait. For most others, it's an acquired skill, acquired through age and experience, which is why it is logical that many of our leaders are in fact 50 years and over in all walks of life. What is common to these leaders? Motivation, perhaps the single greatest trait tied to leadership. Commitment, a conducive environment that lacks barriers, and adaptability to changing times. Today's leadership style focuses more on mission and values, which today plays to the strength of the 50-plus leader. Demographics dictate the need for older workers, certainly. The pure number of younger workers are fewer, and by the year 2018, we will have more jobs than people to fill them. Wouldn't that be nice after this recession? It is about greater productivity and preserving Social Security. More older people working and paying into Social Security, the better. If Americans work 5 years longer, it would more than wipe out the projected Social Security shortfall in the year 2045. The environment for those 50 and over wanting to work, volunteer, and or lead may be better in the future because of the importance of their unique brand of human capital. Their accumulated skills and life experience, including prior leadership, can be tapped to enhance capacity in many different fields. The 50-plus leaders have the ability to apply their skills to solve vexing problems. 85% of the new jobs created in the United States in the past decade have involved analyzing information, problem solving, rendering judgment, and thinking creatively. All skills, as Mark Friedman says, are known to improve with age. We see over and over again at the highest levels of society the value and power of those 50 and over, and in some cases, way over 50. Sumner Redstone, 85-year-old head of Viacom, CBS. 77-year-old Warren Buffett. 91-year-old tycoon Kirk Kerkorian. Nancy Pelosi turned 70 this year, but she became the first Speaker of the House of Representatives in her 60s. Neil Diamond, Tina Turner, and Mick Jagger are all in their mixed 60s, and they still sell out arenas, and Ringo Starr is now 70. 80-year-old Elaine Stritch opening on Broadway and entertaining at the White House. Even in sports, a 60-year-old golfer, Tom Watson, almost won the British Open last year. And let's not forget Betty White back on TV at 88. And Martha Stewart turning 70 next year. 50-plus leaders are important to our emerging high-need areas. Healthcare and the impact of the new reform bill. Those in healthcare for years can better affect change and help train younger generations. In education, science, technology, and the need to modernize and transform to a new era. The environment and the green movement. Being 50-plus does not guarantee that you can lead, but age is not the obstacle to leading that society that it was. Those 50 and over in this country want to work, they want to transform their skills and experience to help others, which is also a key part of leadership. So when we expand the opportunities to work, serve, and learn for those over 50, we are also expanding the ranks of leadership in critical areas of our nation. As it relates to policy changes that advance the Age4Action agenda, it includes obviously full funding for the Serve America Act, passage of the Workforce Investment Act, but one thing we should not forget, the Deficit Commission. As advocates, we need to show them the value to the economy and society of more older workers and leaders, especially to the solvency of the Social Security Fund. The Older Americans Act has a lot of changes that can be made, but I believe we should start by renaming it so it reflects the words opportunity and leadership in its title. Let's have the new Civic Engagement Resource Center convene a federal interagency task force on older individuals and their importance to the federal workplace. And let's have the Older Americans Act take the lead in assessing cultural sensitivity and awareness in opportunities available for the older worker as a leader. In closing, I think what we should just say is it's no more of this getting too old for this. Instead, let's just say we're getting too old not to do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. And as a leader in the aging world, we're going to just, instead of asking you any more questions, we're going to have you stay up here, if you will. And Patrick is going to lead us now into the public, the audience participation part of this. And if you'll stay, Bob, any of us will try and respond or take notes about what you all have to say.
Okay, and just to remind you, this questionnaire that we handed you when you came in about the Older Americans Act, it's specific to the Act, it's not to the forum today, so we would really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts on this questionnaire. As you leave the room, there'll be somebody to collect the questionnaire and give you a raffle ticket, which is for, what's the raffle for?
Coffee bean gift cards.
So?
2 coffee bean gift
Two coffee bean gift cards.
cards.
All right. So if you would take your time on it, there is a mic. Who's handling the roaming mic? Somebody who's doing that? Somebody needs. Yeah. So if you could just raise your hand, and we'll get the mic to you.
Right
and
here,
if
Danny.
you could identify yourself and your affiliation, and given our limited time, to please keep your remarks brief.
Marvin Schacht of ARP, California. I wish that a requirement for entering this conference today had been that no person who was not an actual living, breathing senior could attend unless they brought with them an actual, breathing, living senior who was a volunteer in their organization who had potential for leadership. I emphasize this because at a time when senior programs are under attack, Older American Act, the very basic program, Social Security, the need to create and build a senior movement that includes seniors. Remember the slogan of the disabled movement? Nothing about us without us should be the slogan of the senior community. And I emphasize this because I remember, I'm somewhat older than Senator Waford. I remember that when Social Security was passed, there was a senior movement. It did not include academics because the academic field didn't exist. It didn't include the network of social work agencies that we have today because they did not exist. But in every community in the United States in 1936, there was a Townsend Club organized by seniors. There was a senior movement. I remember participating in a meeting in Union Square in New York City in 1935 where the issue was pensions, Social Security, in other words, and it was made up of seniors, organized by seniors. And I think that is still the challenge that we have. And I think those of you who work in the senior community, in agencies, etc., must increase your efforts to involve senior leadership, actual seniors, to build a senior movement.
Thank you, Mr. Schechter. Next comment.
Very good.
Thank you. I'd like to draw our attention of the Older Americans Act to building a skilled, competent workforce for older people. We have an increasing, burgeoning evidence base, as has been mentioned, for serving older people, for promoting their health, for helping them manage chronic illness, and to helping them with end-of-life decisions. And yet, we don't have the number of people recruited to those positions. And part of that, I think, is based in the Older Americans Act itself. There is no requirement within that act that any of the Older Americans Act services have competent workforce persons to serve them. And the recent Institute of Medicine report, Retooling for an Aging America, makes that mandate for labor force development very, very clear. We have institutions in California, as an example, the California Council on Gerontology and Geriatrics, that have programs that present this research and could develop those skills for a competent labor force. And yet, the positions within Aging American Act services, most of the directors of those services don't have backgrounds in the field of aging, and that we don't really have in those job descriptions any requirement or incentive to have people with knowledge and skills to serve older adults. I think our services would be better. I think in California, the diverse group of young people, and I think that if every older person should come here, I think that every older person should bring a younger person with them to these forums so that we keep creating, as Maggie Kuhn would have said, an intergenerational service corps for older adults. I think we'll have better careers for a diverse group of older people, and we'll have better health for those older people so that they can engage in their community. Thank you.
Right.
I have a survey that also shows that 60% of all those agencies have no one, of all Aging American Act services, have no one who've even taken one course with a knowledge base in aging.
And you are?
I'm Joanne Dameron Rodriguez from UCLA, the School of Public Affairs. Thanks.
Patrick, one quick comment about, and I couldn't agree with you more, and I think the difference between any previous reauthorization of the Older Americans Act and this one is the health care reform bill and the linkage that obviously exists but has to be really worked on to integrate the health care reform bill into the future of the aging network.
Okay. Hands over there.
No, not that guy in the back. Don't touch it.
Hi, my name is Susan Geffen, and before becoming a graduate from this school with my master's in science, I was a trial attorney. I litigated cases under the Age Discrimination and Employment Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. So now I'm a gerontologist, and I'm also a public speaker. And when I go into the corporations, I speak about the continuum of care to the baby boomers and the sandwich generation. And the reason that I'm allowed to go into these corporations is because of the tremendous amount of absenteeism because of caregiving by the employees. And so one recommendation that I have, and I don't know if it can be incorporated into the Act, but at least a dialogue I believe should be started, is incentivizing corporations to incorporate caregiver opportunities for the employees, maybe through tax incentives.
Mm-hmm.
That's.
Thank you.
I'm Neil Cutler. I'm Executive Director of the Center on Aging for the Motion Picture and Television Fund, and an occasional Andrus Gerontology Center hanger-on. So how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Process, process, process. Brian Lindbergh, you've done a marvelous job in putting this together. But the disparate pieces that are there, you have to write a report. And I'm not sure how you can bring all these things together, but let me make one suggestion, one theme. Yes, the Older Americans Act was passed in 1965, but in 1972, the amendments of 1972 changed the character of the act into a prototypical federalism program. There's the Administration on Aging at the national level, the state units on aging, I think there's 57 of them, 57 state units, and around 600 or 660 area agencies on aging. The Older Americans Act is the prototypical federalism model. And so during the course of this morning, Mr. Jonathan Tran mentioned services being cut in California. Donna Benton mentioned grants to states, and Laura Trejo mentioned the need for work and for capacity building at the local level at AAAs. All that bespeaks of the federalism nature of the Older Americans Act. So I suggest, Brian, when you try to write a report, when you are writing a report, and bring all these things together, use that theme. I'm not sure if it's the theme, to use Senator Waford's words, to hang on to, or whether the federalism is something that could be modified. However you deal with it, federalism should be a major aspect of how you bring things together in your report. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carissa Price, and I'm the founder of a company called Trusted Hands Network. And we're looking to provide a bridge between families looking for caregiving and high-quality home care and home health service agencies that provide those services. But my question is this. Why is it that there's such a disparity in this conversation and knowledge about how and what Medicare does or does not pay for, and the real outcome there, which people want to age in home? You all the panelists have talked about that today. People want to stay in their homes. But our Medicare system, our Medicaid system, and our federal system, to use your language, provide every incentive for them to get out of their home and into a nursing home, which is infinitely more expensive for them. So where is the public discourse about this? Why isn't there actually public outcry to say we shouldn't be cutting the funding for home health services? We should actually be taking that money that we're giving to Medicare and put it into people to age at home.
Brian?
Well, that's a great point. We did, however, I think, take what many of us in Washington thought was some decent strides during this past healthcare reform process on long-term care. Many people a year or 2 years ago said long-term care is not even on the table. I mean, you heard people representing the biggest aging organization say, don't even talk about it. You know, it's not going to happen. A number of advocacy groups, including those of us here today, kept fighting for that. So there are little pieces. There's the Class Act, which you know is the first government insurance program for long-term care. It focuses primarily on benefits that an individual in the community would be able to use to stay in the community. So there are little pieces, and there are other improvements to the Medicaid program, for example, the provisions on assets. There's now asset protection for those who stay in the community as well as if you end up in a nursing home. So there are little pieces. I tell you, right now, I can't be real optimistic that we'll be able to pick up the rest of that agenda next year. We will. We'll try, but Congress is in a position right now where they're not looking for new big programs. But there are pieces like the care coordination provisions that CMS now has the ability to expand and cover care coordination and use the best models that are developed over the next couple of years and apply them across the board. Those care coordination programs could end up saving Medicare money while keeping people at home and out of hospitals, and certainly save money on unnecessary readmissions into hospitals. But I think your point is well taken. We have a long way to go on that front.
Right. And the other two things I'd mention, too, the 5-year extension of the Aging and Disability Resource Center program, which is part of the health care reform bill, is an important step, and the 10-year extension of the Money Follows the Person program. because that's about providing help to people back in the community who don't need to be in a nursing home for a long time. And if you look carefully, there's also language about nursing home diversion program funding activity. So Brian's right. It's step by step, but it's a long way from where we were just a year or two ago.
Can I add something really quick? These are the best of times, worst of times. I think the second part of the question, why isn't this happening? In the state of California, and part of the governor's proposal in January, in order to balance an $18 billion budget deficit, was to essentially eliminate in-home supportive services for, I think it was categories 4 and 3, dropping it. So only the individuals that are most at risk would be qualified. And part of this, I think, is a lack of political will. I mean, it doesn't make sense to cut this on the front end because you're going to have to pay for it in the long run ultimately. Right, 5 times more, exactly. And so there has been outrage, and if you go to Sacramento, there are folks that are advocating every single day to try to get these proposals off the table. But when you have an $18 billion budget deficit and half the discussion is not about revenues, and you have a 2/3 requirement in the state of California to do any form of increasing revenues, those types of programs are placed on the table because when it comes to funding in the state budget, who are the individuals that get funded by the state budget? It tends to be individuals that are low income, the elderly, and the disabled. And if you're going to cut from the budget, it's those communities that get impacted. And so without the political will to either get the 2/3 or to create like a third rail, like, you know how like Prop 13 is like the third rail in politics. If we don't create the political will to create the buffer for these types of programs, then they're always going to be targeted for elimination.
We can take one more question.
We should do a few more.
A few more?
Yeah,
Okay, if there's more.
Hi, my name is Wendy Goldman. I do hold a degree from this wonderful school, the Davis School of Gerontology, and I also hold an MBA from the Marshall School of Business across campus. I'm one of the few people who does combine business and gerontology, and I'm hoping that intergenerational programs will come to campus very soon, as I made a list of all the departments on campus, including many programs that exist for the School of Architecture, social work, and every single other degree program on campus has a connection to gerontology and can be proven and advanced through the hard work of our administrators here. I advocate for older workers, and I have a business that has been in development for a while now. And it is a hard sell. It is hard to sell to youth-oriented cultures why we need these programs in place to do age assessments. But I do believe that starting at the earliest possible age in education, to let people know that aging is not a disease. It is not a problem. It is something that we look forward to. It is natural. It is something that we are achieving in later life. But some of the negative connotations of aging that are in place now with our youth-oriented culture, I heard earlier, I would like to see those programs changed. I would like to see more education at earlier levels. I would like to see more programs in place here at USC especially to collaborate between departments. We already have a great collaboration with architecture and social work. Where's the collaboration with the business world? Where are the collaborations with the social entrepreneurs that are living and breathing over in the Marshall School? Where are the collaborations with our sisters and brothers across campus, across town, which I did graduate from UCLA also. And we also have a tremendous number of other educational institutions in Los Angeles that can spearhead these programs from that grassroots level. Thank you.
Thank you. We can take some more questions if there are more questions out there.
Hi, my name is Esty, and I own All Point Home Health, and we provide caregiver services for people who are homebound. But my question is, I'm in the senior community every day, all day long, and I'm not finding that there is enough information about volunteer
opportunities. And that is an issue that I would like to find out about. How do people know? I mean, there are a lot of assisted living environments that could get information about places that they could volunteer in, and a lot of places that, need volunteers, all of the services that spoke today. And basically it's getting the information out there for the seniors to know that there are those opportunities for them.
Thank you. Another question? Any other questions? Comments? Okay, if that's the case, thank you all very much for your attendance. Please remember to turn in your questionnaires.
Harris, we've got to run.
And there's a light lunch outside for anybody who's interested. Nice presentation. Good job. Good job.
Thank you. Well, you don't have to break the ground.